as Alex Eala gave the most dominant performance of her grass court career, a 6-2, 6-2 destruction of Priscilla Hahn in just 64 minutes. The Philippine flags waved and Leon's chants reverberated across center court. At a WTA 125 event in Birmingham, everything abruptly altered in a moment that was never expected to happen. The crowd was electrified and the atmosphere was ecstatic. Cameras captured an incident in which security had to step in. Fans rushed forward, officials hurried in fear, and within hours the video had gone viral on 2 continents, leaving everyone wondering what Alex Eala had done that required security to intervene and why the incident was still being discussed days later. Edgbaston Priory Club, Birmingham, England, June 2, 2026, 2 p.m. 24 hours prior, Alex Eala and her Czech partner Nikola Bartníková had held a match point in their first-round doubles match against British second seeds, so the day had already started with heartache. After failing to secure victory at 9-8, Harriet Dart and Maya Lumsden lost momentum in a thrilling decisive tiebreak and lost 4-6, 6-2, and 11-9. However, singles presented a completely different picture. Fans from all over the UK and even Manila flocked to center court to watch their rising star, and Eala was greeted by an atmosphere unlike anything the historic venue had ever seen. Thousands of Philippine flags were waving, and chants of Laban, Laban, Laban echoed around the grass courts. Eala was the top seed at the Lexus Birmingham Open. When she faced Australia's Priscilla Hahn, who is ranked 143rd in the world, she did not let her down. In a match that highlighted her dominance from the outset to the finish, she asserted control right away. Eala won their first match at Roehampton in 2026, while Hahn won their most recent match at the WD Ningbo Open in October 2024. As a result, the head-to-head was tied at 1-1 going into what seemed to be a rubber match. However, there was no real contest from the first point on because Ella's left-handed serve was flawless, her ground strokes were sharp and penetrating, her movement on grass appeared effortless, and her concentration never wavered as she raced through the opening set in just 22 minutes, winning every first serve point and converting 3 break points to hand Hahn a brutal 6-0 bagel. The second set followed the same pattern, with Eala taking a commanding 5-0 lead and standing on the brink of a rare double bagel before Hahn managed to regain some pride by holding serve and breaking twice in a row to narrow it to 5-2. However, the momentum shift was short-lived, as Eala quickly reset and closed out the match with a confident love hold, sealing a 6-0 6-2 victory in just 59 minutes with a commanding 53-27 total points won. As the crowd settled in anticipation for the customary polite post-match interview. There are a lot more Filipinos here than I anticipated. The stadium erupted in cheers and heartfelt jubilation as they said, "See you all tomorrow." Everything changed on June 2, 2026, at Edgbaston Priory Club in Birmingham, just after the scoreboard confirmed her 6-0, 6-2 victory. The crowd of 17,000 people rose as one, and what transpired would turn an ordinary victory walk into a moment that security would soon struggle to control. She started walking toward the stands to acknowledge her youngest fans. The energy inside Edgbaston Priory Club remained high, almost unbelieving at what had just happened in front of them, but security barriers and reinforced stewards gradually started to relax as officials recovered control of the situation. As spectators reviewed the event on their phones, focusing on the precise moment the surge started, the chants of "Eala, Eala, Eala" turned into sporadic clapping and whispers. During the brief but frantic rush toward the court, tournament staff swiftly restored order and verified that no one had been hurt. Alex Eala, still clearly startled but calm, was led by security through the hallways beneath the stands to the locker room. He kept turning around as though unable to comprehend how a seemingly insignificant gesture had escalated so swiftly. While her crew worked to defuse the situation and make sure she was safely out of reach of the remaining mob, officials spoke in anxious tones about crowd control and protocol violations. Outside, the mood of the stadium gradually changed from uproar to startled contemplation. What was supposed to be a typical post-match celebration turned into one of the tournament's most talked-about moments. Videos of the precise moment fans broke over the barriers and security rushed the court have already gone viral online. Nevertheless, one question persisted throughout the stands, the TV streams, and every truncated replay that was being posted online, whether, even after order was restored, this was either a moment that had gone beyond what any sporting event could reasonably contain, or it was just an overwhelming show of admiration for a growing star. With a microphone dropped in her hand and bags still dangling from her shoulder, she took one more look back at the stands where the mayhem had started. As officials moved quickly to manage the situation, more reinforcements quickly poured onto center court, tightening the cordon and gradually forcing the throng back behind the barriers. This restored a tenuous sense of order. By 10 p.m., the surge had completely faded and was replaced by a tense silence that hung over Edgbaston Priory Club like a caught breath. There were no reported injuries or arrests. However, both officials and supporters were clearly shocked by the emotional impact of what had just happened. One of the tournament's pivotal moments, the picture of Alex Eala being rushed off the court just after she delivered a decisive victory and an impassioned speech to her supporters, was already making the rounds on social media. Following the event, organizers promptly reviewed crowd control protocols and evaluated how a celebratory moment had suddenly devolved into near chaos. As the sound of the stadium outside gradually subsided into a far-off murmur, Eala stayed with her team inside the player facilities, processing the experience in silence. In less than a minute, what had started out as a commanding performance and a genuine bond with her fans had transformed into a moment that blurred the boundaries between admiration and chaos, leaving Birmingham with more than just a score on the scoreboard, a tale that would be replayed, discussed, and remembered long after the final match point. To avoid a repeat of the search from the day before, entry points and viewing lanes should be clearly designated. Early on in the tournament, staff members went about the grounds, whispering to each other, modifying procedures, and subtly admitting that something basic had changed. Previously regarded as a typical WTA 125 event, it was now subject to international scrutiny. When media crews returned to document the morning ambience, the tone had changed, focusing more on the phenomenon that had made a routine triumph into a global talking point than just tennis. Alex Eala went through her routine preparation in a calmer, more deliberate pace within the player facilities. The memories of the day before persisted, but not in joy but in contemplation. As officials tried to strike a compromise between player safety and spectator access, security briefings were now a regular part of the schedule, and movement around the site was more planned and organized. Fans continued to congregate outside, but they were kept at a distance by the updated zones and new barricades. The atmosphere had changed from an impromptu rush to a planned anticipation, but the Philippine flags were still there and waving. Birmingham was more than just a tournament stop by the time play was set to resume. It had become the focal point of a discussion about fandom, control, passion, and the volatile area where sport and intense international attention collide. Overnight, more access points and specialized security guards were added, and it was made very evident that yesterday's events would never happen again. However, the memory of the surge, the panic, the haste, and the picture of Alex Eala being carried from center court persisted, refusing to disappear from Birmingham's atmosphere even as the infrastructure tightened and the regulations got more stringent. Since something had changed. The tennis establishment was always aware of Alex Eala's popularity. They had witnessed the surge in ticket demand for a WTA 125 event that felt anything but modest, heard the cries in Melbourne, and seen the flags at Indian Wells. However, it wasn't until the crowd broke formation and security had to step in that they realized the scope of what she stood for. The numbers ceased to matter in that instant. 25,000 spectators at a WTA 125 on a Tuesday afternoon was no longer just a statistic. Rather, it was a hint that the sport was facing something much bigger than it had anticipated. It turned into a different kind of turning point for Eala. She had always borne the quiet burden of being watched, the pride of an expanding worldwide fan following, and the aspirations of her country. However, she had now witnessed it from the other perspective. A dynamic, flowing sea of people searching for a symbol as well as a player. She knew how important she was to them and how easily appreciation might turn into an unmanageable situation. She had said, "I know it came from love," and she meant every word. However, love can become chaotic when it loses its framework, and chaos can endanger people even when it originates from delight. The competition proceeded. Eala moved on to the following round, where she will take on Beatriz Haddad Maia in what was expected to be her most difficult test to yet. As Birmingham adapted in real time to the level of attention it had suddenly inherited, security barriers were taller, admission points were more restricted, and protocols were more strict than at any point during the event. The tennis community kept a careful eye on the outcome of the next match as well as whether Birmingham had actually learnt its lesson. Because it was now clear that Alex Eala was more than just a tennis player. She was now a movement. Furthermore, movements require structure, security, and respect regardless of how strong or sincere they are. Always Laban. However, safety is more important than ever. Alex Eala's stunning 6-0, 6-2 destruction of Priscilla Hahn at the Birmingham Open was overshadowed by an unanticipated crowd surge that required security to intervene on center court. Officials had to rush onto the court to restore order as thousands of Philippine flags waved and hundreds of fans pushed forward after thanking the crowd in Tagalog and giving a little fan in the stands a moment of bonding. The tournament apologized and strengthened security barriers throughout the venue after footage of the event went viral within hours, receiving over 15 million views. Eala maintained her composure in the face of the commotion. She later posted a message that emphasized safety and respect while acknowledging the emotional intensity of the situation, underlining a rising reality in tennis. Her impact goes well beyond the baseline. Whether the tournament misjudged the size of her worldwide fan following or whether event security procedures are just not designed for this degree of contemporary sporting prominence has been the subject of intense discussion since the occurrence. It is now evident that Alex Eala is more than just a budding tennis player. She is a phenomenon that commands attention both on and off the court, where sport, love, and identity meet in ways that the tennis community is still finding difficult to fully comprehend. Alex Eala gave the most dominant performance of her grass court career, a 6-2, 6-2 destruction of Priscilla Hahn in just 64 minutes. The Philippine flags waved and Leon's chants reverberated across center court. At a WTA 125 event in Birmingham, everything abruptly altered in a moment that was never expected to happen. The crowd was electrified and the atmosphere was ecstatic. Cameras captured an incident in which security had to step in. Fans rushed forward, officials hurried in fear, and within hours the video had gone viral on 2 continents, leaving everyone wondering what Alex Eala had done that required security to intervene and why the incident was still being discussed days later. Edgbaston Priory Club, Birmingham, England, June 2, 2026, 2 p.m. 24 hours prior, Alex Eala and her Czech partner Nikola Bartonkova had held a match point in their first-round doubles match against British second seeds, so the day had already started with heartache. After failing to secure victory at 9-8, Harriet Dart and Maya Lumsden lost momentum in a thrilling decisive tiebreak and lost 4-6, 6-2, and 11-9. However, singles presented a completely different picture. Fans from all over the UK and even Manila flocked to center court to watch their rising star, and Eala was greeted by an atmosphere unlike anything the historic venue had ever seen. Thousands of Philippine flags were waving, and chants of Laban, Laban, Laban echoed around the grass courts. Eala was the top seed at the Birmingham Open. When she faced Australia